All right, guys, for social studies today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a few of the issues we've been going over the last few days related to Islamic contributions. What you see on the screen, most of us recognize because we've gone over these readings, or at least I read them to some of y'all, and we wanted to come away with as many bullet points as we see the numbers here. We're gonna go over that again just real quick to kind of touch base because a lot of people have this in their notebook or they have a Google Doc of this information. This information right here, because I'm talking to two groups, the online learners, you all are going to just put this information into the notebook so you can make a heading to go with each one of these topics when we talk about these topics today. And for everybody that's watching this in class, you all should already have the paper from yesterday that went along with it. Again, you're supposed to be writing a 30 word or more word paragraph to kind of go with the importance of each of these. But we want to make sure that we actually have kind of significant information and sufficient information for all of these. Okay, so our plan again is to just make sure we talk about the previous slide because we need to really wrap up that conversation or make sure that people are still making the connection. And then the information on this next slide is just kind of going into greater detail about these inventions or things that they created or started that help us even still to this day, to be quite honest. So we'll kind of go back and forth between the two. Okay, again, if you're looking over your bullet points for the first topic, which is science, we said quite a few things, but we want to make sure that we have at least three for this topic. We said that astronomers study the skies. We said Islamic people or Islamic scientists created models of the universe, which again, that could be a math situation. We also said for science, they predicted eclipses of the sun. They proved that the moon is what actually affects the ocean tides. They also named a lot of the stars that we still use to this day. And as far as science and then math together, we did mention the invention of the astrolabe, which we're going to get into more detail here over the next couple of days. And there's even more stuff. Again, measuring the distance around the Earth, which could be a scientific but also mathematical. And then confirming that the Earth was round. So again, that could be more of a scientific or it could be more mathematical. In addition, with the math, if we want to jump to math here again, we want to double check our answers just to really make sure that everything's kind of jiving here. We said that with mathematics, they kind of started some of the first chemistry and or algebraic equations. There is some information again we mentioned about them kind of teaching others these skills, but really that's kind of a mixed bag with science and math together. Okay, so from what we've discussed and what I know for the online learners from some of the pages that you read to go with this, you should have more than enough science and math to go with the bullet points. To go back to the medicine, we also said there's quite a few of these. The biggest ones we mentioned were that they discovered that the blood actually circulates throughout the body via the heart. So blood kind of is pumped in and out of the heart, and that's what is kind of the center point of the body. They recorded or diagnosed many different diseases, so they kind of kept track of what diseases are caused by which things. Another thing we mentioned was that a lot of these doctors that lived in the Arab Empire, they wrote down a lot of the information they came up with. Okay, so they created medical journals so that other people could study from them, medical textbooks. So that's going to be a big benefit for a lot of people. We said that Arab doctors had to pass a test before actually practicing medicine, which was kind of a new concept. They created the first med schools, they created the first pharmacies, and they also created the earliest medical clinics, or what we know today would be called hospitals. Okay, Now, we did say that for art and architecture, let's just again really make sure that we get this. The one and the one that are with these are not necessarily examples, but they're supposed to be more or less main idea statements to kind of represent the entire Islamic contribution to go with both art and architecture. Okay, for art, we've mentioned a couple things, but to pretty much wrap it into one sentence or a couple of thoughts, the art of this time period was really based on the religion of Islam. And in the religion of Islam, they could not use specific images. So, like images of people or many living things were kind of frowned upon. Because, again, we've talked about how they believed that you should not worship idols. You should not worship like the statues or the paintings themselves because it takes away from the actual purpose, and thereby for the art as well. They did have very ornate and very decorative things, but they usually included things like leaves, flowers, stars, fancy handwriting, geometric patterns, geometric shapes, repetitive shapes. So that's kind of the whole thing with art. Okay, so again, the art is based off of Islam, and being that Islam does not allow images of people like God or Muhammad and so forth, they spent their kind of creativity using different things like star patterns or geometric shape patterns or different handwriting or leaves. So that's kind of art in a nutshell. The architecture, again, very similar. A lot of beautiful buildings would be found in the Arab empires or these mostly Islamic cities. So they have a lot of decorative or beautiful buildings. And the most prominent, the most important in each of these cities was probably going to be a mosque. It also mentioned, it could be the palace of, let's say, the ruler of that particular city, but mostly you're going to have the most decorated or the most kind of beautiful of these buildings be the one that is used as the mosque. So there again, for the general statement, you're looking at this thing and thinking, okay, so their architecture again is fancy and it's decorative, but it's just like the art, kind of based off of the religion itself. Okay, so I know that's a review, but I'm talking again to two groups here because I have my online people that I'm getting caught up with as far as this thing goes, and the in-class people, we just talked about this. We want to make sure we kind of get it. Now, this is the information that for most people in general is very specifically new. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this, again, I'm going to say this, but if you're an online learner, really what you need to do is probably add your title in the notes and then add just a section for each one of these. And we're going to add a few thoughts, make a few connections, and you want to write down some of the things we discussed. For all the people that are in class, the idea is that you already have this paper. You may also have a few of these boxes or pictures done, but we really want to, again, look at the word count and look and see if our answers are specific enough, because the idea is that we want to talk about how these particular inventions or things that were mentioned to go with each topic, how they benefited people either in that time period or even still to this day. Okay, so hygiene again should be a quick one. We've talked about it, but the fact that was written or the fact that was discussed is, first of all, that in Islam, being clean and washing regularly is a religious rule, just, out of practice itself. And because of this, they perfected early recipes for what we know today as soap or shampoo. So what we write as far as our answer, like how it changed the world or how it benefited people, is very straightforward, because we mentioned that hygiene is not just about being clean and not being stinky for others. The reality is that being hygienic and being clean helps you stay healthy, and it helps other people stay healthy, right? Because if you are clean and hygienic, you're probably less likely to spread a disease to others around you. Okay. So realistically, the contribution or the kind of importance of it is just that. Okay. The fact that their religion kind of forced them to be clean for God or out of respect to God, and that kind of by accident helped people ward off disease a little bit more commonly. Okay, so we move on to photography. Now, this is a little bit of an explaining here, but for photography, uh, the facts that are mentioned is that Islamic inventors created the first pinhole cameras. And if you all see this diagram, a pinhole camera is usually like a closed off box. So this is kind of a crosscut. And you have on the background what will eventually become film paper. And you have right here in this little circle what is today pretty much like a lens. And the first pinhole cameras pretty much work like this. You had an image out here. So let's say they're trying to take a picture of this candle. You open the hole up. So you pull up like a little door frame. Whoops. And you open the hole here and it exposes this paper or this film to the image that's outside. So the natural light that's just kind of around you in the room exposes it through this hole. Now it's upside down because, again, with the lens that's here, it's going to make the image upside down. But this is kind of the first pinhole cameras. And the second fact that goes with photography is the fact that the word uh, Qamara from Arabic means dark room. So Qamara eventually becomes camera. And obviously, that dark room goes together because early film was processed in a very dark room using special chemicals and low lights. Okay, now back to the point of this. How does photography change the world or benefit people? Okay, you all can have numerous different answers. But I think a lot of people are going to say that the most obvious is that it helps you remember things or keep track of events. So that can be just within your own family, or that can be obviously historically speaking, because if people have photography of certain events or they have photographs, let's say, of famous people, it helps us remember and learn these things throughout the years. So the benefit again overall of photography is just basically record keeping or keeping track of memories for everybody's benefit. Okay, so I know there's a lot going on with this photography thing, but there's a pretty easy answer to go with it. Okay, hospitals. This one's pretty straightforward. It was mentioned before when we talked about medicine down here. Some people had asked me in class if they could use some of these medicine bullet points that they mentioned with hospitals to go with hospitals, and that's definitely okay with me. To make it very short, they created the first modern hospitals in places like Cairo, Egypt, and they provided free health care for those that wanted to come into the hospital to be treated. And to be honest, they connected that with pillar three of the five pillars, which is charity. So they created these hospitals not just to help people, but also to fulfill their charity pillar. Okay, so the people that worked in the hospital felt like they were fulfilling their third pillar by providing charity for the people that needed help. Okay, and the answer for how it helped others or benefited others or changed the world, I think is pretty obvious. So no matter how you want to word it, the reality is that hospitals help people who are in need of medical treatment. So it could be administering medicine, it could be performing surgery. There's all kinds of numerous things that a hospital provides. So as far as you all's answer, as far as what you want to write down, I think it's kind of up to your best judgment. But I think the invention of hospitals just serves so many purposes that you shouldn't really have any kind of trouble writing a little bit down for that. Okay. Leads me to education. This one is going to be pretty straightforward too. We've already mentioned that part of education was that they created medical schools. So that kind of creates a hospitals and an education combination there. But not only did they create the first medical schools, they created the first universities in general. So just like any other school or the purpose of any other school, people would go there to be educated or to improve their knowledge about a certain topic. It could be like these guys down here are studying parts of the Quran, and you see the Arabic writing up on the wall. So they're studying different parts of their religion and their holy book. But there's obviously numerous things that a university or a school could be kind of focused on. So for your answer on this, again, it's pretty straightforward. How it changed the world is obviously that people can become more educated. They can gain more knowledge about specific topics. They thereby can get, let's say, maybe better jobs, and they can earn more money for themselves or their family. So, as far as the importance of the education or them creating the first universities, that pretty much speaks for itself, let's just say. Okay, the last one here we want to knock out is algebra. There's a few things going on here, but we'll get into the basics. The first thing is that the word algebra comes from an Arabic term. The Arabic term is al-jabr, which is A-L and then a hyphen J-A-B-R. So al-jabr means completion or to complete something. So it makes sense that the term algebra and algebra go together because when you do algebraic equations, you are trying to complete something. You're trying to figure out a problem by using mathematical data. Okay, and this information becomes kind of the basis for what we know today as engineering, modern engineering. Now, what is modern engineering? Well, engineering is using mathematics in order to plan different architectural or building projects. So instead of figuring out things like 2 plus 2 equals 4, algebra's purpose is, as you guys can see here, to try to figure out how we build things or how do we build things to a certain height or what kind of angle would we need if we start building this thing or how much weight it would involve. So really, as far as you all's answer, you really just need to come up with a purpose for why algebra is important. So obviously, algebra helps engineers and architects plan for buildings so that those buildings don't fall down and hurt people, or that they're a total waste of money, and all these different reasons. Okay, things like roads and bridges are also included, so you can see some obvious benefits of having a lot of good roads and good bridges. Okay, so again, for all the online people, you are pretty much just putting this information with your notes. You should, again, for each of these 5 topics, have some kind of connection to how that benefited people or still does to this day. And the same thing for everybody doing this in person, in class. You do have the paper in front of you. You should have had plenty of time to look back on this information and kind of get the boxes filled. And you should probably just hang on to it as of right now because I feel like some people may have some more questions or we may just kind of go into it real briefly again. But for now, we've done quite a bit here, like I said, between going back over these things and then coming up with why this information is going to be beneficial. So that kind of wraps it up for now. I will tell you again that over the next couple of days, I told you all we're going to get into these specific details about the astrolabe and the geometric repetitive patterns. And speaking of repetitive, like the tessellation patterns. So this is again just more cool information or cool examples that go with the science, math, kind of art, architecture, design situations. Okay. So again, good job for today. Let's hang on to all this information. And again, if we run into any problems, we'll talk about it here very soon. So thank you all again for paying attention and hope you got some good information here. All right. See ya.